Jonah's ship landed on the alien world with a soft thrum. The surface of the planet shimmered under a pale green sun, casting strange shadows across the city that sprawled in every direction. Towering buildings with smooth curves and glowing lines created an intricate maze of streets and walkways. Alien beings of every shape and size bustled through the marketplace, their voices rising and falling in a cacophony of languages Jonah had only begun to understand. Jonah had been here before. He knew the risks. This world was notorious for its mercantile laws, where power and influence dictated life and death and humans were rare. Many looked down on them, thinking of humans as simple, fragile creatures incapable of surviving the complex systems of alien cities. But Jonah knew better. He had survived worse. He had lived through human wars, alien betrayals, and countless life-threatening encounters. He tightened the straps of his bag and stepped carefully into the crowd. His eyes scanned the streets, searching for any signs of the illegal trade he had come to confront. Jonah wasn't here for profit or glory. He was here to rescue children, small beings who had no voice in the brutal system that sought to exploit them. Today, he was determined to do something that mattered. Among the clamor of merchants and buyers, Jonah noticed a small figure lingering near a stall. At first, he thought it was just another alien child begging for coins. But the way the little being stood apart, her small frame trembling, drew his attention. She was no taller than a human child of 7, her skin a soft lilac, and her large violet eyes shimmering with fear and hope at the same time. Delicate wings, translucent and faintly glowing, rested against her back. Her hands clutched a worn toy, a small mechanical bird that had clearly seen better days. The girl's gaze met Jonah's. Her voice, small and hesitant, floated above the marketplace's noise. "Are you going to sell me like Papa?" The words hit Jonah like a physical blow. He froze, the bustling crowd fading into the background. He knew immediately that she had seen tragedy, loss, and betrayal. She spoke with the innocence of a child, but her eyes carried a weight no child should ever bear. Jonah's chest tightened and a memory surged forth, a memory of all the children he had tried to save and the ones he could not. He knelt down slowly, making sure not to startle her. "No, I'm not going to sell you. I promise," he said, his voice low and steady, but his hands shook slightly. The girl's wings fluttered nervously, and she took a small step toward him. Jonah could see the faint marks on her wrists, evidence of the slavers' cruel treatment. He felt a surge of anger. These were not just criminals, they were monsters. And he, a human, would stop them, even if it meant risking his life. Jonah scanned the marketplace again. Alien enforcers patrolled the area, their armor reflecting the pale sunlight. They were tall and heavily built, with glowing eyes that scanned the crowd for trouble. Jonah knew that any attempt to remove the girl from this place would be met with resistance, but he had faced worse before. "Come with me," Jonah whispered, extending his hand. The girl hesitated. Fear and hope battled in her eyes. Finally, she grasped his hand with surprising strength. Her touch was cold and small, but Jonah felt an unspoken bond forming in that moment. They moved quickly, slipping through narrow alleys and crowded streets. Jonah kept to the shadows, using the small human advantage, his agility and speed. The girl stayed close, her trust growing with every step. She whispered small things about her father, about the life she had lost, and about the cruel people who had taken her family from her. Jonah listened silently, his heart heavy with sorrow. As they reached a quieter part of the city, Jonah found a small alcove behind a merchant's stall. He set the girl down gently. "You're safe here for now," he said, "but we have to move again soon. They will be looking for you." The girl's voice was barely audible. Will you really keep me safe?" Jonah met her gaze and nodded. "I swear it. You will never be sold or hurt again. I will protect you." For a moment, the girl's wings fluttered lightly as if responding to the promise. She handed him the small mechanical bird she carried, a token of trust. Jonah accepted it carefully, understanding the significance. This small act was more than just giving him a toy. It was a sign that she was beginning to believe in him. Suddenly, the sound of heavy boots echoed through the alley. Jonah's eyes snapped toward the source. Alien enforcers had spotted them. Their glowing eyes swept the shadows and their voices boomed, calling for anyone trying to evade the law. Jonah's mind raced. He had to act fast. "Stay close," he whispered to the girl. He grabbed her hand and they darted through another series of alleys, twisting and turning. Jonah used every trick he knew. ducking behind stalls, sliding under walkways, and even using his limited knowledge of alien technology to temporarily disable a surveillance drone. The girl was quiet, but Jonah could feel her tiny hand trembling in his grasp. He gave her a reassuring squeeze. "You're doing great," he said. "Just a little further." Finally, they reached an abandoned building near the edge of the marketplace. Jonah pushed the door open and ushered the girl inside. The room was dark, dusty, and filled with old crates, but it was safe for now. He closed the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. The girl sat down on the floor, hugging her knees. "Papa," she whispered. "I just want him back." Jonah's throat tightened. "I know," he said softly. "I know." He realized that the girl was more than just someone to save. She was a reminder of why he fought. Humanity was fragile, yes, but it was also compassionate, clever, and courageous. He could use these traits to protect the innocent, to challenge injustice, and to show that humans were capable of incredible things, even on worlds far from their own. Night fell over the alien city, painting the streets with deep blues and purples. Jonah sat beside the girl, keeping watch. He knew the slavers would not give up easily, but he also knew that he would not fail, not this time. The girl had placed her trust in him, and he would honor it no matter the cost. For the first time in a long while, Jonah allowed himself to feel something he had buried deep inside. Hope. The tiny alien girl had sparked something in him, a reminder that even in the darkest places light could shine. He would protect her. He would fight, and he would show the galaxy the strength, compassion, and courage of a human. As the city's distant lights flickered, the girl finally closed her eyes, trusting Jonah enough to rest. He kept watch, silently vowing that tomorrow would be another step toward freedom, for her and for all the children who had suffered like she had. And so, in the shadowed corner of an alien city, a human and a tiny alien girl began a journey that neither would ever forget, one built on trust, courage, and the unyielding power of humanity. Dawn crept across the alien city, painting the towering buildings with soft shades of green and gold. Jonah had spent the night in the abandoned building with the tiny alien girl, whose name he had learned was Lyra. She slept lightly, wings tucked close, clutching the small mechanical bird he had accepted from her the previous day. Jonah watched over her, knowing that danger lurked just beyond the walls. The city was waking. Market stalls rattled as vendors arranged their goods, and alien citizens moved in careful patterns, some casting suspicious glances at a human wandering in their midst. Jonah knew he had little time. The enforcers would resume their search, and he had to move Lyra to a safer place away from the crowded streets where detection was likely. "Lyra," Jonah whispered, shaking her gently to wake her. "We have to go. It's not safe here." Lyra opened her violet eyes, blinking against the sunlight. "They'll find us again," she said softly, her voice quivering. "They always do," Jonah nodded. "I know, but I have a plan. Just stay close to me and we'll get through this." He handed her a small cloak to cover her wings. The cloak was thin, but would make her less noticeable among the crowd. Lyra pulled it around herself tightly, and Jonah offered a reassuring smile. Her small hand fit perfectly in his, and he held it firmly, a silent promise that he would not let go. They moved through the early morning marketplace, careful to stay in the shadows. Jonah kept his eyes on the crowd, scanning for any sign of the enforcers. It wasn't long before he noticed them, a group of tall, armored figures moving purposefully through the streets. Their glowing eyes swept the crowd, searching for intruders. "Stay low," Jonah whispered to Lyra, guiding her behind a stall. She crouched beside him, wings folded and trembling. The enforcers passed, scanning the area with precision, their footsteps echoing like distant thunder. Jonah felt his heart race. One wrong move and they would be captured, or worse. As soon as the enforcers disappeared from sight, Jonah led Lyra down a narrow alley, twisting and turning through the maze-like streets. He used every trick he knew, hiding behind crates, ducking under overhangs, and slipping through passages too small for the alien guards. Lyra followed closely, her small body moving with surprising agility. "Jonah," she whispered after a while. "How do you know where to go?" He smiled faintly. "I've had practice," he said. "Humans have a way of seeing paths others miss. Just trust me." Lyra nodded, but her wings quivered. She had never traveled like this, never run for her life in such a chaotic city. Jonah understood her fear. He had felt it himself many times, facing dangers that seemed impossible to overcome. But fear did not stop him, and he would teach her that courage was stronger than fear. The alley ended at an open square. Jonah peered around the corner. The square was bustling with early morning activity. Merchants setting up stalls, citizens carrying packages, and a few small vehicles moving along the raised tracks. Jonah knew they needed to cross quickly, but the open space left them exposed. "Hold my hand tight," he whispered. Lyra's fingers curled around his. They dashed across the square, weaving between people and vehicles. Jonah's heart pounded, but his mind stayed sharp. He noted every patrol, every corner where an enforcer might appear. Halfway across, a drone hovered above, scanning the crowd with a soft hum. Jonah grabbed Lyra and pressed her into the shadow of a nearby stall. He pulled a small device from his bag, a jamming signal he had used before. With a flick of his fingers, the drone's sensors faltered and it drifted harmlessly away. Lyra gasped in amazement. "You can do that?" she whispered. Jonah smiled. Humans are full of surprises. They continued, moving quickly and silently. Jonah led them to an old transport tunnel he had discovered on a previous visit. It was narrow, dark, and mostly unused, making it a perfect hiding place. The air was cool and smelled faintly of metal and dust. Jonah held Lyra close as they navigated the tunnel, listening for any sound of pursuit. Hours passed as they traveled through the labyrinth of tunnels, finally reaching a hidden exit at the edge of the city. From here, Jonah could see the outskirts where abandoned structures provided temporary refuge. He led Lyra through the overgrown streets, careful to avoid the patrols. As they walked, Lyra began to open up more. She told Jonah stories about her father, a kind and gentle alien who had been taken by slavers. She spoke of her mother, her home, and the life she had lost. Her words were full of pain, but also hope. Hope that someone would care for her now. Jonah listened silently, his heart heavy with sorrow. "You're very brave, Lyra," he said softly. "More brave than anyone I've met. And I promise I will keep you safe." Lyra's eyes shone with tears. I just want to be with someone who cares," she whispered. Jonah's own eyes welled up. He had seen so much suffering, so many children lost to cruelty and greed. But this small alien girl, with her fragile body and strong spirit, reminded him why he continued to fight. He squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore. I won't let anything happen to you." Suddenly, the distant sound of engines broke the moment. Jonah froze. He peered around the corner and saw a patrol vehicle speeding toward them. The enforcers had discovered their escape route. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Lyra's hand. They sprinted through the abandoned streets, jumping over debris and ducking under low-hanging structures. The patrol vehicle followed, its lights cutting through the morning haze. Jonah's mind raced. He had to find a way to lose them, or they would be caught. He led Lyra into a narrow side alley, too small for the vehicle to enter. The patrol slowed, and Jonah used the opportunity to duck behind a stack of crates. The enforcers scanned the area, but Jonah and Lyra were hidden in the shadows. Jonah's heart pounded in his chest. Every sound felt amplified. Every movement could be their undoing. After what felt like an eternity, the patrol vehicle sped away, leaving Jonah and Lyra alone. He let out a deep breath and sank to the ground, pulling Lyra close. She rested her head against his chest, exhausted and trembling. "You were amazing," Jonah said softly. "You stayed calm even when it was scary." Lyra looked up at him, a small smile forming on her lips. "I wasn't alone," she said. Jonah nodded. "Exactly. And that's why we survived." They continued their journey, moving away from the city and toward a small abandoned settlement Jonah knew would provide temporary shelter. Along the way, he taught Lyra how to use simple tricks to stay hidden, how to move quietly, how to watch for patrols, and how to recognize safe places. Each lesson was small, but it built her confidence. As night fell, they reached the settlement. The buildings were old, their surfaces cracked and faded, but they offered protection from the patrols. Jonah set up a small sleeping area for Lyra, using blankets and pieces of cloth he had carried. She curled up, wings tucked close, and fell asleep almost immediately. Jonah kept watch, his mind alert. He thought about the journey ahead. The enforcers would not stop searching, and the slavers would be relentless. But Jonah had something they did not: human ingenuity, courage, and determination. He also had Lyra, whose knowledge of the city and the slavers' operations could be a key advantage. Together they had a chance. Jonah's thoughts drifted to the future. He knew they could not stay in hiding forever. They would need a plan, a way to expose the slavers and bring them to justice. But for now, survival was the priority, and he would ensure that Lyra was safe until the moment came to strike back. As he watched over her, Jonah felt a sense of purpose stronger than he had felt in years. He had a mission, a reason to fight, and a life to protect that mattered more than his own. Humanity was not just a fragile species. It was capable of incredible courage, resilience, and compassion. He would show the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. And in that quiet, abandoned settlement on the edge of an alien city, a human and a tiny alien girl prepared for the journey ahead. One filled with danger, hope, and the promise of a future where the innocent could finally be safe. Jonah knew the road would be long and difficult, but he also knew one thing with certainty. He would never let Lyra be taken again. Not by the slavers, not by the enforcers, and not by anyone who underestimated the strength of a human heart. The abandoned settlement was quiet, almost eerily so, but for Jonah and Lyra it felt like a small sanctuary. The buildings, though crumbling and overgrown with alien vines, provided enough cover to hide from patrols and prying eyes. Jonah had found a single structure with intact walls and a sturdy roof. Inside, he quickly made a small living space. He spread a few blankets for Lyra to rest on and cleared a corner for supplies he had carried with him. Food rations, water, and a few tools. Lyra sat cross-legged on the blanket, her wings folded neatly behind her. Her violet eyes glimmered with curiosity as she observed Jonah moving about the space. He noticed her looking at his hands, the way he methodically prepared a small meal. "Why are you so careful with everything?" she asked softly. Jonah paused and smiled faintly. "Because being careful keeps people safe. I've learned that the hard way." He handed her a piece of food. "Here, eat something. You need strength if we're going to keep moving." Lyra hesitated but accepted it. "I don't usually get food like this," she said. "Most of the time I had to take whatever I could find. Or hide from people who wanted to take me." Jonah's heart tightened. He had seen this before. Children robbed of trust, forced to survive in harsh conditions, unable to expect kindness. He wanted to change that for her. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said firmly. "Not from me. I won't let anyone hurt you again." For a moment, Lyra simply stared at him. Then she whispered, "You really mean that?" Jonah nodded. "I promise. You're safe with me." Her small shoulders relaxed, and for the first time in a long while she seemed at ease. Jonah watched her closely, knowing that trust once broken was hard to rebuild. Yet she had already started to believe in him, and that belief was precious. As the morning passed, Jonah and Lyra organized their small hideout. Jonah checked the surrounding area through a narrow window slit, noting patrol schedules and the movements of alien drones overhead. Lyra, curious and eager to help, asked questions. "Jonah, how do you know so much about their patrols?" she asked. He smiled wryly. "Experience. Humans have a way of noticing patterns. If you watch carefully, you can predict almost anything." He paused and looked at her seriously. "And I want to teach you to watch too. It could save your life one day." Lyra nodded, her small wings twitching. "I want to learn." Jonah's eyes softened. Teaching her was more than a strategy. It was a way to empower her, to give her confidence that she could survive, and even fight back if needed. As they settled in, Lyra began to share more about her past. Her voice was soft, almost fearful, but there was a determination in her eyes. "Papa, he tried to stop the slavers," she said, "but they took him anyway. Mother tried to, but..." Her voice faltered and she pressed the mechanical bird to her chest. "They were too strong. They took everything." Jonah felt a lump form in his throat. He knelt beside her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry, Lyra, I can't bring them back, but I can make sure no one else takes you. And maybe we can stop them from hurting anyone else too." Lyra looked at him, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "You mean we could fight them?" Jonah nodded. "Yes, but first we need to understand them. We need to know who they are, what they want, and how they operate." Over the next few hours, Lyra revealed what she had learned about the slavers' operations. She spoke quietly, describing hidden locations, secret transport routes, and the guards' schedules. Jonah listened intently, taking mental notes and formulating a plan. "You know a lot," Jonah said finally, "and your knowledge is going to be very important. Together we might actually be able to make a difference." Lyra's small hand found his again. "I want to help," she said firmly. I don't want anyone else to go through what I went through. Jonah smiled, a mixture of pride and relief washing over him. Good, you will help, and I'll teach you everything I can. The afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the settlement. Jonah decided it was time to rest, but he couldn't sleep yet. He paced the small room, thinking through their next steps. The slavers were organized, powerful, and relentless, but he had humans' greatest advantages: ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. And now, with Lyra's knowledge, they had an edge. He looked at her sleeping peacefully on the blankets. Her small chest rose and fell rhythmically, her wings twitching slightly as if she were dreaming. Jonah felt a surge of determination. He would protect her. He would fight for her. And he would make sure the slavers paid for every act of cruelty they had committed. Night fell completely, and the settlement was silent. Jonah kept watch at the window slit, observing the city beyond. The alien lights twinkled in the distance, and he could see patrols moving methodically through the streets. The city was dangerous, but he had learned to navigate it. He would use every trick, every bit of knowledge he had to keep Lyra safe. Hours passed. Jonah finally allowed himself to sit beside her. "Lyra," he whispered, "you're very brave. I know you've been through a lot, but your courage, it's amazing." She stirred slightly, opening her violet eyes. "I'm only brave because you are," she said softly. "If you weren't here, Her voice trailed off, and Jonah squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to finish that," he said. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." They sat together in silence for a while, the bond between them growing stronger. Jonah realized that humanity's strength was not just in technology or weapons, but in the capacity to care, to trust, and to protect. Lyra had reminded him of something he had almost forgotten. Even in the darkest places, hope could survive. The next day, Jonah and Lyra explored the outskirts of the settlement. Jonah showed her how to move quietly, how to observe patrols, and how to find safe routes through dangerous areas. Lyra learned quickly, her small body nimble and alert. She asked questions, and Jonah answered with patience, explaining human reasoning and tactics in simple terms she could understand. "You see?" Jonah said as they crouched behind a pile of debris. "Humans often solve problems by thinking differently. You have to look at a situation from all angles. That way you can find solutions that others might miss." Lyra nodded, her eyes wide with concentration. "Like noticing the drones before they see us?" "Exactly," Jonah replied. "You've got a good mind for this." As they returned to the safe house, Jonah's thoughts turned to the slavers. They could not hide forever. At some point, they would have to confront them, to stop their operations and free the children who were still in danger. But that confrontation required careful planning, patience, and precision. Jonah was used to planning. It was part of surviving as a human among powerful alien forces. Back in the settlement, they reviewed Lyra's information. Jonah mapped out the slavers' known locations, routes, and schedules. "If we act carefully," he said, "we can hit them where it hurts the most, and we can protect others in the process." Lyra's eyes shone with determination. "I want to help," she said again. "I want to stop them." Jonah placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And you will. Together we will." That night, as they rested, Jonah reflected on the journey so far. He had rescued Lyra, evaded patrols, and gained valuable knowledge about the slavers. But the most important part was the bond they had formed. Lyra trusted him, and in return he had promised to protect her. That promise was now a mission that would require courage, intelligence, and unyielding determination. Jonah knew the path ahead would be dangerous. But he also knew that with Lyra by his side, and with humanity's strength guiding him, they had a real chance to succeed. The tiny alien girl had shown him the power of hope, and he would use every skill, every ounce of courage, to honor that hope. As the alien city slept under the green sun's fading light, Jonah and Lyra prepared for the next phase of their journey. One filled with risk, but also with the possibility of justice, freedom, and the reaffirmation of everything that made humans remarkable. And in that quiet settlement, two unlikely allies, one human, one tiny alien girl, began to plan their strike against the slavers who had caused so much pain. Together they would face danger, overcome fear, and prove that even the smallest and seemingly weakest could make a difference when courage and trust guided them. The sun had barely risen over the alien city when Jonah and Lyra began their journey toward the slavers' headquarters. The settlement behind them was silent, hiding their tracks, but Jonah knew time was short. The longer they waited, the more likely the slavers would discover the trails they had left. Jonah carried a small bag with essential supplies, and Lyra clutched the mechanical bird, now a symbol of trust and courage. "Stay close," Jonah whispered as they moved through the abandoned streets. Lyra's small hand held his tightly. Every shadow, every sound was a potential threat, but Jonah's focus never wavered. His mind worked quickly, calculating patrol patterns, noting the positions of guards and anticipating traps the slavers might have set. The headquarters was a massive building at the heart of the industrial district. Its walls were thick and metallic, and the entrances were guarded by heavily armored enforcers. Drones hovered above, scanning the area with glowing eyes. Jonah stopped behind a stack of crates, assessing the scene. "Lyra," he said softly, "this is where they keep everything. If we want to stop them, we need to be smart." "Do you remember everything you told me about their patrols and secret routes?" Lyra nodded, her violet eyes shining. "Yes, I know where the back entrance is. It's not guarded much, and the cameras don't see it." Jonah smiled faintly. "Good, that's our way in." He crouched low and led her along the narrow alleys toward the back of the building. The path was tight, overgrown with metal scaffolding and pipes, but it offered cover. Jonah moved like a shadow, and Lyra followed without hesitation. As they reached the back entrance, Jonah examined the door. It had a simple locking mechanism. Nothing compared to human security systems, but it was enough to prevent casual entry. Jonah pulled out a small tool from his bag, a compact device he had modified for this mission. With careful adjustments, he bypassed the lock and the door clicked open. "Go inside slowly," he whispered. Lyra nodded and stepped through first. The interior was dimly lit, with narrow hallways and storage rooms filled with crates and equipment. Jonah followed, closing the door quietly behind them. They moved carefully, avoiding the few guards patrolling the inside. Jonah had taught Lyra how to stay low, watch for shadows, and anticipate movements. She did remarkably well, her small frame allowing her to slip through gaps Jonah couldn't. He felt a sense of pride. She was learning, adapting, and showing courage beyond her years. They reached a central chamber where the slavers kept their records and valuables. Jonah crouched behind a crate, observing the guards. There were 3 of them, armed and alert. He whispered instructions to Lyra. "You're going to help me get those records. Your small size is an advantage. Can you reach under the table and grab the data device?" Lyra nodded. She moved quietly, her wings folded tightly. Jonah watched as she slipped under the table, her fingers brushing against the small glowing device. With a soft smile, she pulled it out and handed it to Jonah. "Excellent," he whispered. "Now let's get out before they notice." Suddenly, a guard turned and noticed movement. Jonah's heart raced. He had anticipated this possibility. With a swift motion, he activated a small flash device, creating a blinding light that disoriented the guards. Lyra ducked behind him, wings quivering, but Jonah remained calm. Using the moment, he guided her toward a side exit. They ran through the corridors, dodging guards and avoiding detection. Jonah used his knowledge of the building's layout, remembering paths he had scouted earlier. Lyra followed closely, her small size allowing her to slip through spaces Jonah had to maneuver carefully around. Finally, they reached the roof. The city stretched out beneath them, vast and chaotic. Jonah scanned the area. Drones hovered nearby, but he had one more trick. He activated a small EMP device, temporarily disabling the drones. The hum of their sensors died, and Jonah led Lyra across the rooftop toward a maintenance ladder. As they descended, Jonah spoke softly. "You did well, Lyra, very well. Your courage and knowledge made this possible." Lyra looked up at him, a small smile on her face. "I wasn't scared because you were with me," she said. Jonah's chest tightened. "You're learning something important. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear." They reached a lower level and moved through a service tunnel that led to the street. Jonah knew the patrols would soon notice their absence, so they had to leave quickly. They slipped through the alleys, sticking to shadows, and finally reached a safe distance. Jonah pulled out the data device Lyra had retrieved. It contained records of the slavers' operations, locations of other children, and the transactions that had funded their activities. This was more than Jonah had hoped for. It was enough to expose the entire network. "We have what we need," he said quietly. "This will bring them down, and we'll make sure no one else suffers the way you did." Lyra looked at the device, eyes wide with understanding. "We're going to stop them?" "Yes," Jonah said. We're going to stop them. But the mission wasn't over. Jonah knew the slavers would retaliate if they discovered the breach. They had to act fast and smart. Using the device, Jonah transmitted the information to the authorities and human allies he trusted. The data revealed the entire operation, shipment routes, locations, and schedules. Within moments, alerts went out across the city and surrounding sectors. Meanwhile, the slavers were reacting. Jonah and Lyra heard distant alarms and the sounds of vehicles moving quickly. Jonah held Lyra close, guiding her to a small drainage tunnel he had scouted earlier. The tunnel was narrow, dark, and provided cover as the city descended into chaos. "They're coming," Lyra whispered, clutching his arm. "I know," Jonah said. "Stay calm. We've prepared for this." The sounds of pursuit grew louder, but Jonah's strategy worked. The tunnels twisted and turned, giving them an advantage. The slavers, larger and less familiar with the tunnels, struggled to follow. Jonah's human ingenuity and knowledge of patterns allowed him to anticipate their movements and avoid traps. Finally, they emerged near the outskirts of the city, where abandoned structures offered temporary refuge. Jonah paused, letting Lyra catch her breath. Her small chest rose and fell rapidly, wings twitching with exhaustion. "You were amazing," Jonah said softly. "I couldn't have done this without you." Lyra smiled faintly. "I wasn't alone," she said. Jonah nodded. "Exactly. Courage is stronger when you have someone to trust. And you've shown me that humans and aliens can work together to overcome impossible odds." As night fell, they watched from a safe distance as the authorities moved in on the slavers' headquarters. Lights flashed, alarms rang, and within hours the entire network was dismantled. Jonah and Lyra observed quietly, knowing that their actions had made a real difference. Lyra turned to Jonah, eyes shining. "We did it," she whispered. "Yes," Jonah said. "We did, and now you're safe. For good." The tiny alien girl's wings fluttered slightly, a sign of relief and freedom. Jonah felt a sense of pride and accomplishment, not for himself, but for what they had achieved together. Humanity's strength, he realized, was not just in technology or strategy, but in courage, compassion, and the bonds formed between individuals. As they walked back to their temporary hideout, Lyra held Jonah's hand tightly. "Will there be more children like me?" she asked. Jonah nodded. "Yes, and we'll help them too. We'll make sure no one else suffers the way you did." The night air was cool, carrying the distant sounds of the city. Jonah felt a renewed sense of purpose. The slavers were defeated, but the journey was far from over. There were more children to save, more battles to fight, and more opportunities to show the galaxy what humans were capable of. And as they walked side by side, human and alien, protector and child, Jonah knew that together they could face anything. Courage, trust, and hope were powerful weapons, more powerful than fear or cruelty. And they would use them to build a better future. The alien city was quiet in the aftermath of chaos. The slavers' network had been dismantled, their headquarters emptied and sealed, and the authorities were busy securing evidence and rescuing those who had been trapped. Jonah and Lyra watched from a safe distance, hidden behind the overgrown walls of their temporary hideout. "It's really over, isn't it?" Lyra asked softly, her violet eyes wide. Jonah nodded. "For now, but we have to stay careful. The city may change, but danger doesn't disappear entirely." Lyra's small wings twitched nervously. I've never felt this safe before." Jonah smiled gently. "Safety isn't something you can always find. It's something you create, and I'll help you create it." They left their hideout and moved toward a nearby human outpost Jonah knew. It was small, hidden from the main city, but well-stocked and protected. Jonah had communicated with the human authorities before, giving them Lyra's information and ensuring that she would have allies who understood her species and her unique abilities. The outpost was quiet as they arrived, a small building nestled between metal structures and alien flora. Jonah opened the door and a human officer greeted him, surprise and relief evident in his expression. "Jonah, I didn't expect you back so soon," the officer said. "I've brought someone with me," Jonah replied, gesturing to Lyra. "She's key to dismantling the slaver network and to helping other children like her." The officer's eyes widened as he looked at Lyra. "You're safe now," he said softly. "No one will hurt you here." Lyra's wings fluttered slightly, a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She looked up at Jonah, trust and gratitude shining in her eyes. Jonah knelt down beside her. "See, you're safe. And you're not alone anymore. Over the next few days, Lyra settled into the outpost. She met other children who had been rescued, learned about human customs, and began to understand that kindness and protection were not weaknesses. They were strengths. Jonah visited daily, teaching her more skills: observation, strategy, and problem-solving. Each lesson strengthened her confidence, and Jonah felt proud of how much she was growing. One afternoon, Lyra approached Jonah with the mechanical bird in her hands. "Jonah, I fixed it," she said, her voice bright. "It can fly again." Jonah smiled, impressed. "You did that all by yourself?" Lyra nodded. "I wanted to show I can do something useful. I want to help humans and aliens work together." Jonah felt a surge of hope. Humanity's strength, he realized, was not just in courage or technology, but in its ability to inspire and teach. And now, this tiny alien girl was learning that same lesson. Cooperation, intelligence, and bravery could change the world. The city was beginning to recover. The authorities had started returning the rescued children to their families, while the slavers faced justice for their crimes. Jonah and Lyra watched as patrols secured the streets, drones flew overhead ensuring order, and alien citizens cautiously resumed their routines. Life was returning slowly but surely. One evening, Jonah and Lyra stood on a rooftop overlooking the city. The sky was painted with shades of green and gold, the sun setting on a day that had seen both chaos and triumph. Lyra leaned against Jonah, small and fragile but filled with strength. "Jonah," she said softly, "do you think there will always be people like the slavers?" Jonah sighed. "Unfortunately, yes. There will always be some who try to take advantage of others. But that doesn't mean we give up. It means we stand up, we protect, and we make a difference wherever we can." Lyra looked at him, eyes wide and thoughtful. "I want to do that too. I want to protect others just like you protected me." Jonah smiled and ruffled her hair gently. "And you will."
You already have.
"Courage comes in many forms, and you've shown it every day." They spent the evening talking about the future. Lyra wanted to help rebuild her city, assist other children, and learn more about humans and their ways. Jonah encouraged her, teaching her that knowledge, patience, and careful planning were powerful tools. He also reminded her that being compassionate and brave were strengths humans had relied on for generations. As night deepened, Jonah reflected on their journey. He had started as a human alone in an alien city, facing danger and uncertainty. Now he was a protector, a mentor, and a friend. Lyra had grown from a frightened, vulnerable child into a courageous, determined young girl. Together they had faced impossible odds, outsmarted ruthless slavers, and brought hope to those who had none. Days turned into weeks. Lyra became a familiar presence at the outpost, teaching other children some of the skills Jonah had taught her. She was patient, careful, and surprisingly clever. Jonah continued to guide her, always emphasizing observation, intelligence, and empathy. One afternoon, as they practiced navigating a simulated patrol scenario, Lyra paused and looked at Jonah. "You know, I used to think humans were weak, fragile, that we couldn't rely on you." Jonah raised an eyebrow. "And now?" Lyra smiled brightly. "Now I know humans are strong, not just in body, but in mind and heart. And I think you're the strongest human I've ever met." Jonah chuckled softly. "You're pretty brave yourself, Lyra. Bravery isn't about size, it's about heart. And you've got more heart than most aliens or humans I've met." Lyra's smile widened. "Thank you, Jonah, for everything. For saving me, and for teaching me to be brave." Jonah felt a warmth in his chest, a deep sense of fulfillment. This was why he had fought, why he had risked everything. It wasn't for recognition or for glory. It was for moments like this. Seeing someone grow, seeing hope restored, and knowing that courage and kindness could change lives. Weeks passed, and the city continued to stabilize. Jonah and Lyra knew that life would never be completely free of danger, but they also knew that with trust, intelligence, and courage, they could face any challenge. Lyra began exploring the city under Jonah's guidance, helping children, assisting the authorities, and slowly reconnecting with her community. One morning, as they prepared to leave the outpost for another day of work, Lyra looked up at Jonah with determination. "Jonah, I want to help others more. I want to show them that humans and aliens can be friends. Can we do that together?" Jonah smiled warmly, his eyes reflecting pride and hope. "Of course, Lyra. Together we'll make sure no one feels alone or afraid. Together we'll show them that courage and trust can overcome fear." The tiny alien girl clutched his hand, wings fluttering slightly in excitement. Jonah knew that humanity's strength was not just in survival, but in the ability to inspire, to teach, and to protect. And with Lyra by his side, he knew they could make a real difference in this alien city. And perhaps, one day across the galaxy, as they walked into the streets, side by side, human and alien, protector and pupil, the city seemed brighter, filled with possibility. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of hope. And for the first time, Lyra felt truly safe, truly brave, and truly free. Jonah glanced down at her small, determined face and knew that their journey was only beginning. They had fought for justice, brought down those who sought to harm others, and discovered the true strength of trust and courage. Now together, they would continue to face the world, confident in the power of humanity and the bonds that could unite even the most unlikely allies. And so, a human and a tiny alien girl walked forward into the dawn of a new beginning, one where hope, courage, and friendship could shine brighter than fear, cruelty, or oppression. Together, they would protect the innocent, inspire the lost, and prove that even in a vast, uncertain galaxy, the strength of one human heart could make all the difference.